Okay, so at the end, in our previous lesson, we read about the last two incidents of Elijah's life. His confrontation with the son of Ahab, and then his translation to heaven. His exit from this earth into whatever state of being he exists in afterwards. Elijah came and went mysteriously. He has no background. He's Elijah the Tishbite. That's all we really know about him. We don't have any record of his family or his genealogy or what he was doing before he became a prophet. Of course, he left as mysteriously as he came. His ministry seems to have been relatively short, very high profile. It was marked by a series of very high profile encounters with Ahab and the wicked kings of Israel. Of course, he called for a drought on the land that lasted for several years. He had the encounter with the Baal prophets. He encountered the king, the son of Ahab, the second king of Israel. And then he went up to heaven in a whirlwind. So he had a lot of really intense, miraculous moments packed into a fairly short, it seems like, a fairly short ministry. He was high profile, but he was not like a public figure in the sense that you could go and talk to this guy. He was hidden a lot. He spent those 3 years of the drought hiding. Even at the end, when he's confronting the messengers from Ahaziah, king of Israel, son of Ahab, they come up to him and they talk to him about, hang on a second, my brain is, he zaps them with lightning from heaven or fire from heaven. Then when he is gone, afterwards, when he gets called up to heaven in this whirlwind by these flaming chariots or horses or whatever, the prophets themselves think that he might have been carried away to some other location, some mountain or valley around. Obadiah, the servant of Ahab, a faithful prophet of God who was also serving Ahab, when he meets him at the end of the 3.5 years of drought, he thinks that Elijah is going to vanish. Apparently Elijah had this reputation of like just disappearing, and that may be because of the extended period of time that he was alone and in hiding during those days, and nobody knew where to find him. But he was not someone that you could just like go and talk to. Like Ahab, at the end of his days, when he's trying to consult his prophets to determine whether he should go fight Ramoth Gilead, we read about that. And Jehoshaphat, king of Judah, asked if there's a prophet. He doesn't a prophet from Yahweh, a legitimate prophet of the Lord there for Ahab to consult. He doesn't consult Elijah. He doesn't have access to Elijah. He does have access to some other guy. There's some other guy there that he does have access to. He has him locked up in prison, doesn't actually want to access him, but he has access to him, even if he doesn't want to listen to him or not. He can't just summon Elijah. He can't just snap his fingers and he can't tell his army commander to just go and get Elijah and bring him. That's not how Elijah worked. Okay, you didn't just go and get Elijah to come to you whenever you felt like it. So he was a very mysterious prophet whose ministry was marked almost entirely with miraculous signs. He does not seem to have been an accessible figure, someone that the people could just go and talk to. Elisha will be different. Elisha's ministry is going to be longer. Elijah's ministry also doesn't seem to have lasted for all that long. Elisha is going to be around for like 50 years. Okay, Ahab the king, the one that Elijah dealt with, died in the year 853 BC in a battle of Ramoth Gilead. And Elisha is going to be around from about that time until 800 BC. He's going to be around for the next 50 plus years. So Elisha is going to have a much longer ministry, and it's going to be kind of a more mundane ministry. It's going to have a lot of miracles in it. He's going to do a lot of miracles, actually more recorded miracles than even Elijah did, although nothing quite to the spectacular level of Elijah. But he is going to be like with the people. He's going to be like in the city. He's going to be interacting with them. He's going to be with the prophets. He's going to be teaching them. He's going to be living with them. He's going to be providing for them. There's going to be a lot more hands. He's going to be a lot more accessible than Elijah ever was. Elijah was not accessible as a prophet. You couldn't just go and ask Elijah a question or ask him to do something or ask him to consult the Lord for you whenever you felt like it. That was just not Elijah's purpose as a prophet. It will be Elisha's, however. Elisha is going to be that way. And so now, the next several chapters of Kings is going to give us a bunch of different examples of things that happened in Elisha's life. And this would be a representative examples. This is not by any means an exhaustive or cumulative list. And this is going to be the next several chapters of the book of 2 Kings is going to be a record of some of the things that Elisha did throughout his ministry. And remember, this is a guy who's going to be around for 55 or so years. He's going to be around from about 850 or 855 BC to the early 700s BC. So he's going to be around for 50, 60 years. So these stories that are included here in the next several chapters of Kings could happen at literally any point. Remember, I mentioned earlier that this section of Kings is not arranged chronologically. Most of Kings is, at least by the standards of the Bible, which is not all that concerned about chronology most of the time. This section of Kings is not arranged chronologically. And so the things that are happening in the next several chapters of Kings could be happening pretty much at any time from about 850 or so BC to the early 700s BC. So 50 plus years of time. And there's just really not any way of, at least in the text we have here, there's really not any way of determining when these things happened during that long stretch of time. So anyway, we're going to be starting with him still in Jericho shortly after the disappearance of Elijah. This is 2 Kings chapter 2, starting in verse 19. The men of the city, and we're still in Jericho at this time, said to Elisha, "Look, our Lord, this town is well situated, as you can see, but the water is bad, and the land is unproductive. Bring me a new bowl," he said, "and put salt in it." So they brought it to him. Then he went out to the spring and threw the salt into it, saying, "This is what the Lord says, I have healed this water. Never again will it cause death or make the land unproductive. And the water has remained wholesome to this day, according to the word Elisha had spoken." This water apparently was doing something to women to cause them to be barren or to have miscarriages. So they had to do something to cleanse the water so as not to keep causing miscarriages. From there, Elijah went up to Bethel. So he's going back the way he came, basically. As he was walking along the road, some youths came out of the town and jeered at him. "Go on up, you bald head," they said. "Go on up, you bald heads." Apparently Elisha was bald. Now, Elisha would be a fairly young man at this point. Because remember, his ministry is going to last like 50 plus years. So for him to have a 55-year-long ministry or so, he's got to be fairly young when it starts. So he would be a young man at this point in time, and apparently he was already bald. He turned around, looked at them, and called down a curse on them in the name of the Lord. Then bears came out of the woods and mauled, didn't necessarily kill, but mauled 42 of the youths. And he, Elijah, went on to Mount Carmel, and from there returned to Samaria, the capital city of the northern kingdom. Okay, so now we have a bunch of stories about Elisha the prophet and some of the various things he did and the ways he interacted with people during his long 55 plus year ministry. 2 Kings chapter 4. The wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that he revered the Lord. But now his creditor is coming to take my 2 boys as his slaves." Now, I'm not entirely certain what's behind this. Apparently, at some point, this guy, this prophet, whoever he may have been, took out a loan and could not pay it back in time before he died. I don't know if this is supposed to be an illegal seizure of these 2 young men, boys, or if, I don't know. In Deuteronomy, we read about the idea of canceling debts and setting slaves free Deuteronomy 15, at the end of every 7 years you must cancel debts. This is how it is to be done. Every creditor shall cancel the loan he has made to his fellow Israelite. He shall not require payment from his fellow Israelite or brother, because the time of the Lord's time for canceling debts has been proclaimed. Down in verse 12, if a fellow Hebrew, a man or woman, sells himself to you and serves you 6 years, in the 7th year you must let him go free. And when you release him, do not send him away empty-handed. Supply him liberally from your flock, your threshing floor, and your winepress. So I'm not sure if this is a legitimate taking of these two people as slaves, or if this creditor is going to take them away by force. The prophet apparently was a man of God, but I don't know if this creditor is. So I don't know if this woman is concerned that her sons are going to be taken and sold into a lifetime of slavery, or if she simply doesn't want them to be taken for the next 6 years or whatever. I don't know exactly. The text doesn't exactly explain whether or not this creditor, the prophet was a man of God. We read that clearly. But I don't know if the creditor is. So I'm not sure if the creditor is going to illegally seize these two guys as slaves or what's going on exactly. Elisha replied to her, "How can I help you? Tell me, what do you have in your house?" "Your servant has nothing there at all," she said, "except a little oil." Elisha said, "Go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few, as many as you can get. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars, and as each is filled, put it to the side." Okay, so she's going to have a little bit of this oil that she's got, and she's going to go around and collect as many jars as she can hold, basically. As many jars as she can get from her neighbors. Take them into her house, then take the one jar of a little oil that she's got and start filling it into each of these jars. She left him, and afterward shut the door behind her and her sons. They brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring, so this little bit of oil is not running out. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another one." But he replied, "There's not a jar left." Then the oil stopped flowing. So the oil filled as many jars as they had for it to fill. She went and told the man of God, and he said, "Go, sell the oil and pay your debts. You and your sons can live on what's left." So whatever debts that her husband had accumulated had to be paid off. That was lawful and legal. I don't know if the creditor is coming to take her sons lawfully and legally or not. But I guess the debt itself was, so they had to pay that off. But she did with this oil that was provided to her to do that, and then live off of what was left. One day, just some random day, Elisha went to Shunem, and a well-to-do woman was there, who urged him to stay for a meal. So whenever he came by, so this became a regular habit then from that point forward. So whenever he came by, he stopped there to eat. She said to her husband, "I know this man who often comes our way is a holy man of God. Let's make a small room on our roof and put in it a bed." Remember, their roofs are actual living spaces. They had flat roofs, and they actually, unlike us with our roofs today, they just cover our houses. Their roofs were actual features of their houses back then. "Let's make a small room on the roof and put in it a bed and a table, a chair and a lamp for him. Then he can stay there whenever he comes to us." One day, when Elijah came, this is a lot like Jesus and his apostles traveling through the countryside and staying with people during their ministry. There's a lot actually in here during this section about Elisha that Jesus is going to, I think, intentionally imitate in his own ministry 800 plus years from now. That one of these ideas of traveling around and staying with people, I think, is one of them. One day, when Elisha came, he went up to his room and lay down there. He said to his servant Gehazi, "Call the Shunammite." So he called her, and she stood before him. Elisha said to him, so Gehazi is acting as a go-between here for some reason, "Tell her, you have gone to all this trouble for us. Now what can be done for you? Can we speak on your behalf to the king or the commander of the army?" She replied, "I have a home among my own people." She was a well-to-do woman. She was an aristocratic woman. So she was not lacking in material things. And she didn't want to be associated with the king and the commander and all of their idolatry and sin, because clearly this was a good family, a holy family here. So they didn't need any material blessings. "What can be done for her?" Elisha asked. Gehazi said, "Well, she has no son, and her husband is old." Then Elisha said, "Call her." So she apparently went away and came back again during this time. So he called her, and she stood in the doorway. "About this time next year," Elisha said, so he's talking to her directly now, "you will hold a son in your arms." We read that back in Genesis, with Abraham and Sarah being visited by God and saying, "You're going to have a son this time next year." She didn't even ask for a son. And up to this point, there was no indication that she was even, thinking about that. He's just telling her this, basically. In fact, when he asked her what he could do for her, she didn't even ask for a son. She didn't even ask for that. This is something Elisha is offering her completely unprovoked. "No, my lord," she objected. "Don't mislead your servant, O man of God." And she doesn't even want to hear it. She has accepted her lot in life as a barren woman, and she doesn't even want to think about the disappointment of not having a son. But the woman became pregnant. And the next year, about that same time, she gave birth to a son, just as Elisha had told her. I don't know how old she is. Apparently her husband was old. She probably would have been old too. It doesn't actually say that, but who knows. When Sarah was old, it talked about her being old. She was old and her husband was old. In this case, it doesn't say that she's old too. It just says her husband is old. So maybe she's not old. I don't know. She may not be past the point of childbearing, but I don't know. Maybe she is. I don't know. The child grew. That's actually not the point of the story, though. The point of the story is not about the birth of the child. There's much more to it than that. The child grew, and one day he went out to his father, who was with the reaper. So he's 10, 11, 12 years old. He is ready to go out and actually do some work in the field now. My head, he said to his father. So he's getting some sort of headache, maybe heat exhaustion, maybe something. His father told the servant, "Carry him to his mother." He's being overwhelmed by the work, apparently. I don't really know. After the servant had lifted him up and carried him to his mother, the boy sat on her lap until noon. So it was apparently early in the morning when he started having problems. And then he died. She went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God. Remember, that's up on the roof. And he's not here right now. So they have an empty room up there. Then shut the door and went out. She called her husband and said, "Please send me one of the servants and a donkey, so that I can go to the man of God quickly and return." "Why go to him today?" he asked. "It's not the new moon or the Sabbath." "It's all right," she said. Now, I don't know if she's told him about the death of their son or not. Apparently not. It doesn't say that she did. So maybe he doesn't know that his son is lying dead upstairs. I don't know. I just don't know. She's not confiding in her husband, certainly, in any way. She saddled the donkey and said to her servant, "Lead on. Don't slow down for me unless I tell you." So she set out and came to the man of God at Mount Carmel. I don't know how far away that would be from where she is. Apparently not too far, but I don't know. When he saw her in the distance, and he's on top of a mountain, I guess, looking down, the man of God said to his servant Gehazi, "Look, there's the Shunammite. Run to meet her and ask her, 'Are you all right? Is your husband all right? Is your child all right?'" Elisha does not know what's wrong. He has not been given a vision from God about this. "Everything is all right," she said. Everything is not all right. But she only wants to talk to Elisha. She's not talking to her husband, and she's not talking to Gehazi, or her servant, and she's not talking to Gehazi. She wants to talk to one man and one man only, and that's Elisha. When she reached the man of God at the mountain, she took hold of his feet. Gehazi came over to push her away, but the man of God said, "Leave her alone. She is in bitter distress, but the Lord has hidden it from me, and has not told me why." So Elisha is not God. Elisha does not know what God does not tell him. God has not told him anything about this, so he does not know what's going on. "Did I ask you for a son, my Lord?" she said. "Didn't I tell you, don't raise my hopes?" Elisha said to Gehazi, "Tuck your cloak into your belt, take my staff in your hand, and run. If you meet anyone, do not greet him, and if anyone greets you, do not answer. Lay my staff on the boy's face." But the child's mother said, "As surely as the Lord lives, and as you live, I will not leave you." So he got up and followed her. Now Elisha doesn't know exactly what to do here. He just got done saying that God has not given him any insight or revelation about this. So he doesn't necessarily know what to do from as far as a direct insight from God. He's going to have to work through this challenge on his own, based on what he knows about God and the patterns and principles that he's already been taught about God. Gehazi went on ahead and laid the staff on the boy's face, but there was no sound or response. So Gehazi went back to meet Elisha and told him, "The boy has not awakened." When Elisha reached the house, there was the boy lying dead on his couch. He went in, shut the door on the two of them, and prayed to the Lord. Then he got on the bed and lay upon the boy, mouth to mouth, eyes to eyes, hands to hands. As he stretched himself out upon him, the boy's body grew warm. This is exactly what Elijah did with the widow in Sidon that he was with in previous years. So Elisha is following the principles that he has learned about from his master Elijah. 1 Kings 17. The widow from Zarephath, her son has died. "Give me your son," Elijah replied. He took him from her arms, carried him to the upper room where he was staying, and laid him on his bed. Then he cried out to the Lord, "O Lord my God, have you brought tragedy also upon this widow I am staying with by causing her son to die?" Then he stretched himself out on the boy 3 times and cried to the Lord, "O Lord my God, let this boy's life return to him." So Elisha wasn't there for that incident, but obviously he would have heard about it straight from Elijah. So he is doing what Elijah did and hoping for the same result that Elijah got. As he stretched himself out upon him, the boy's body grew warm. Elisha turned away and walked back and forth in the room, and then got on the bed and stretched out upon him once more. The boy sneezed 7 times and opened his eyes. I'm not sure if that's the boy sneezed 7 times or Elisha did this 7 times. And 7, of course, is the number of completion and perfection, so we know now this is from God. Elisha summoned Gehazi and said, "Call the Shunammite." And he did. When she came in, he said, "Take your son." She came in, fell at his feet, and bowed to the ground. Then she took her son and went out. That's the second recorded resurrection in Scriptures. The first one was Elijah resurrecting that boy from before. This is the second time, so we're seeing a pattern established here. God now has proven twice that he has power over death. On 2 separate occasions, through the work of his prophet Elijah and then Elijah's successor Elisha, God has resurrected a dead child and established that he has power over death. Elisha returned to Gilgal, and there was a famine in that region. While the company of the prophets was meeting with him, he said to his servant, "Put on a large pot and cook some stew for these men." One of them went out into the fields to gather herbs and found a wild vine. He gathered some of its gourds and filled the fold of his cloak. They would have had pockets and folds in their garments to hold things in. When he returned, he cut them up into the pot of stew, although no one knew what they were. They're just that desperate, they're willing to eat unidentifiable gourds. The stew, or after they cook them at least, the stew was poured out for the men, but as they began to eat it, they cried out, "Oh, man of God, there is death in the pot!" This must have been some kind of poisonous gourd, and they could not eat it. Elisha said, "Get some flour." He put it into the pot and said, "Serve it to the people to eat." And there was nothing harmful in the pot. So those were poisonous gourds. They were wild gourds that they didn't know, didn't identify. It was a famine in the land. So they were desperate enough for food. They were going to eat these things even if they didn't know what they were. And it turns out they were poisonous. And so Elisha had to find a way to cleanse the poison by pouring it with flour. A man came from Baal. Now here's a big one. This is definitely one that Jesus is going to replicate in his own ministry in the Gospels. A man came from Baal Shalishah, bringing the man of God 20 loaves of barley bread baked from the first ripe grain, along with some heads of new grain. "Give it to the people to eat," Elisha said. "How can I set this before 100 men?" This apparently is still taking place in the time of the famine. So they need food for these people because there's no food around. So Elisha wants to provide for these people and says, give this bread to the people to eat. "How can I set this before 100 men?" his servant asked. But Elisha answered, "Give it to the people to eat. For this is what the Lord says, they will eat and have some left over." So he did get a word straight from God for this. Then he had it set before them, and they ate and had some left over, according to the word of the Lord. Now, Jesus is going to do basically this exact same thing in the Gospels, where he feeds the 5,000 with the 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. And that's recorded in all 4 Gospels. That's one of the miracles that's actually recorded in all 4 Gospels. So you know that it was important to those Gospel writers to include that information, because they all did. All 4 of them did. Even John, who was writing significantly after the other 3 Gospel writers and was writing from a different perspective than them, saw fit to include that miracle. John has a lot of unique material in it that is not in the other Gospels, and does not repeat a lot of the same material that's in the other Gospels. But he does repeat the miracle of the feeding of the 5,000. And he also adds some information to it before and after to provide some more context about it. But the point and thing here is, if you look at John chapter 6, which gives the account of this, which again is in all 3 of the other Gospels too, but John goes on to give some information about what happened afterwards. And it says in John chapter 6, verse 14, "After the people saw the miraculous sign that Jesus did, where he fed the 5,000 in the same way that Elijah just did here, 800 plus years earlier, they began to say, 'Surely this is the prophet who was to come into the world.'" So this sign of feeding the 5,000 was a direct callback to Elisha's work in the day, as a prophet, the man of God, in his own day, and that's what got the people to start seeing Jesus as the prophet who is to come. So so this section here about Elisha's ministry has a lot of similarity to Jesus' ministry, and of course that would be intentional, because Jesus would be intentionally replicating some of the things that the previous prophets of eras past did to identify himself to the people of Israel that this is the guy they're waiting for.